Hey guys, um, I don't have much of a voice. I've had this like sinus congestion stuff, but anyway, I'm coughing like crazy. Instead of trying to explain this to you on Zoom every bell, I decided to screencastify how to start your paper so I can show you what to do, but you can also go back and watch it if you need to. At some point, it'll be there for you. Okay. So just so you know, I did set this up MLA format. I used my maiden name just so you could see the difference, but this is how you set it up. Make sure that you're in like Arial or Times New Roman font, size 11 or 12, and make sure you're double spaced, which is just this little guy right here. You go down to double, so even your heading should be double spaced. Here's your name, then my name. Excuse me, then the class and the date. And then you just hit enter one time and you center the title, come up with a clever title, and center it. Notice it's not bold, it's not bigger, it's not underlined, it's not italicized, it's just centered in the middle. Okay, then you just hit enter one more time and you tab in to start your paper. I also want you to put page numbers. So if you don't know how to do that, you can just go to insert page number and then click this guy and then write your last name in front of it like this. And then that will show up on every single page. Okay. So if you look at my introduction, I just have my first two paragraphs for you. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Notice how my second page has my last name and then the page number already there. You don't have to do it on every page. But I just did my intro paragraph and then my first reason paragraph here for you to use as an example. But I wanted to point out a couple of things. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I did start with this like fact here, and I wanted to make that known to you. Like I didn't start with a question, and I didn't. I just jumped in with a fact. Okay, so a fact or a quote. That's always a good way to start paper like this. Um, but my topic is my claim is that kids should not be allowed to have cell phones until they're 14. Okay, so I just started out talking about cell phones when they became available, how quickly they progressed to smartphones. And then as you read on, you'll see that I have some data here about when kids, the average age that kids get their own phone in America. Notice I did cite my sources right here, and I have those italicized. I'll talk about that in a minute. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But I transitioned from what cell phones are to how many or how old kids are when they tend to get them. And then down here, I talk a little bit about how long they spend on the screen, right? And I have a transitional it transitions pretty smoothly. So just says with such easy access to cell phones, the American Academy of Pediatrics reports that children are on average spending up to 21 hours a week in front of just these little screens. That doesn't include video games, television, or other devices. For their own health and safety, children should not be allowed to have their own cell phones until they are 14 years old. Okay, so that is my claim. So if you read through this, you'll notice that it just transitions nicely to what are cell phones, about kids with cell phones, into my claim. Okay, so I did put in my claim my reasons for their own health and safety, but I didn't elaborate on that. If you want to put that kind of thing there, you can. This claim would also be successful if it just said children should not be allowed to have their own cell phones until they're 14. So it's okay to include your reasons. It's okay to leave those out as well. Okay, so I do want you to notice my transition into my first reason. And remember, you have to appeal to emotion or ethics, use loaded language, use expert opinion, any two of those things. But my transition, notice that I don't have a phrase here that says something like, the first reason kids shouldn't have cell phones is. I think we need to start working on eliminating those phrases and looking for transitional words. Right here, this is a really good transitional word according to the data. Okay, you don't necessarily have to introduce your brand new paragraph. You can just use a word like this that will transition nicely into your first point. So, my first point here is the health of kids. So, I want you to notice that again. I talk about a study, but I talk about who did that study. This makes my position a little bit stronger as opposed to saying according to a study, right? I want to know who did this study, so that way it gives a little bit more credentials to your argument. Okay, so this just talks about test scores and it talks about the thinning of the brain's prefrontal cortex. Goes on to talk about um, sleeping habits, focusing, posture, that kind of stuff. But if you read through this, you'll notice it is formal in tone, but I also break from that formal tone because I don't want it to be just a research paper. I want it to be convincing. Okay, so if you read through this, according to the data collected in a study by the National Institute of Health, kids who spent more than 2 hours a day on screen time scored lower on language and thinking tests than kids, whoops, and kids, I'm sorry, with more than 7 hours a day experienced a thinning of the brain's prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain is essential for critical thinking and reasoning. Okay, that's all pretty formal. But then here I kind of break that formal tone. Um, and I come from a more emotional angle, I guess, that screens are physically altering kids' ability to make good decisions and distorting the structure of the brain. So you see the more emotional language there. And then again, not so formal, as if that isn't bad enough. Screens also impact, and then I just list all of these other things. Okay, again, next sentence, not as formal. Literally everything we want to help our children develop to the best to their best potential is hindered by screen time. Okay. So I have the formal tone, but then I get a little bit more or a little bit less formal as I try to get a little bit more emotional about the frustration or the worry that you should feel. And then down here, I relate to these people, right? It's easy for us to hand over our cell phones to give in because everyone else has one. You see the bandwagon appeal there. Um, but then I bring it back to this formal tone. Okay. And then lastly, notice that I bring it back to the claim. This is important. The end of somewhere, and it doesn't have to be at the very end, but somewhere in each of your paragraphs, make sure that you are bringing your point back to the claim. My claim, if you remember, was for their own health and safety, children should not be allowed to have their own cell phones until they are 14 years old. So here I say, if kids have limited screen time throughout their childhood, meaning no phone of their own, this part of the brain will be stronger. And by the age of 14, there you go, that's my claim. They will be better able to handle the responsibility of having their own phone and make healthy, right there's my first reason, choices regarding their phone. Okay. So this is just an example. I'm working on it. Tomorrow I'll go over the next two paragraphs with you. But I wanted you to see, I'll highlight this too. I just wanted you to see a good way to lay out this paper. Okay, how to start it with some facts or statistics or quotes. Make sure you work your way, transition into a good, solid claim that you can prove one way or the other, that you can take a stance on, that we use good transitional words into our next paragraph, that we're citing our sources if that's necessary. Make sure you are not just copying and pasting straight from a website. Okay, put it in your own words. And then the importance of restating your claim even within your reasons. Also, I want you to notice one more thing. just in these 2 paragraphs, I used a lot of resources. These are the websites that I pulled information from. I am not gonna make you do a works cited page, we don't have time, but I do want you to cite your sources. So, like, look, I have them right here. Here are 2 of them. Okay, so if you find information and even if you're paraphrasing it and you're not quoting it directly, just copy and paste that website down here, the bottom of your page. Okay, so that way, when all said and done, I can see what sources you used. And you should definitely have sources. You can't make this all up. Okay, that was a really long video, but hopefully this is helpful for you. I'm going to post it on Google Classroom so that way you can refer back to it as you're working. And then also, obviously, I will have my Zoom link open. I will have it open all day. So even if you're like in study hall, you can pop into Zoom and ask me questions if you want to or in morning time. I don't have COVID, just so you know. I did get tested. I just have like a sinus infection. It just so happens to be that I'm quarantined because my family has COVID at the same time I have this infection. So anyway, if you have questions, let me know. Hopefully this is helpful for you. Use your time wisely. You only have 4 days to write this paper. Okay? Okay.